Yeah. Hello, welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability. Today with me, Jonathan.
Hello.
Myself, and our guest speaker for today, Trinity. How you going, Trinity?
Hello, I'm good. Thanks for having me, Ibby and Jonathan. Really excited to be
So,
here.
so it's a pleasure. First of all, Trinity, do you want to introduce yourself and what role you play?
Of course, I'm Trinity Ford, she, her, and I'm the president of People with Disability Australia. So I'm sure everybody is aware of PWDA. We are the National Cross-Peak Disability Representative and Advocacy Organisation, and also newly the National Peak LGBTIQA plus disability organisation as well. So it's nice getting to champion another kind of specific section of our member base as well, because People with Disability Australia has about 1/3 of our members are queer in some way. So yeah, really exciting work.
Cool. Thank you for sharing it, Trinity. Welcome, man. So, first question, what are foundational supports and how will they impact the lives of people with disabilities?
Yeah, so foundational supports are, I suppose, designed to give people with disability access to essential services and supports, whether or not they're on the NDIS. So obviously, they're very important for people who don't have the NDIS. So that tends to be the kind of group that we're talking about. And currently, there's a pretty limited understanding of what foundational supports will look like as they get rolled out, but we do understand some of these basics about them. They're divided into general supports. For example, like information and advocacy and capacity building stuff, as well as targeted supports. So practical assistance for those with higher support needs, but who can't get on to the NDIS. I just want to do a quick audio check. It's just started absolutely bucketing down outside. Can you hear me okay, or is the background audio noisy?
No, we can hear you perfectly clear,
All right.
actually.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's right. So yeah, I mean, these supports are meant to basically close the gap that was left when the NDIS came into the picture and the states and territories took a step back in delivering disability supports. So what we're trying to fix with foundational supports essentially is getting all of those other people, who are in that gap, the supports that they need. So without foundational supports, millions of people with disability are being left without necessary assistance. So it's leading to a sort of crisis situations and a real reliance on emergency services and strain on families and these sort of informal systems and networks that aren't well equipped to deal with this really important gap. And of course, a nationally consistent approach is going to be really crucial here, because we don't want somebody who's, getting the lottery in New South Wales or getting a poor deal out in WA, just to pick two states at random.
Yeah. How important is it to educate, for especially for, our community, our people who don't really have a voice, so we gotta be the voice for them. So that's amazing work you do, Trinity.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
So,
it's so important that we're the voice, because otherwise, when the government's building this up, we know that whenever governments build things without us co-designing it, there with them, they get it wrong because, they don't have enough information about us. And then we see time and time again, the government needs
yeah.
to come back in and unpick what they've done and bring us in. So we'd rather get it right the first go.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing, Trinity. Next question, how were disability services delivered prior to the NDIS?
Yeah, so I touched on this just before. So before the NDIS, it was just the states and territories who were responsible for delivering disability services. So this included like not just the community-based supports and transport assistance and home care and actual like support workers. So I think that it differed state by state. I think that
Yeah.
many of them were like state-run programs, some were then defunded or dismantled, and some were sort of outsourced to the private sector. But essentially, when the NDIS came along, the federal government
Yeah.
was like, hey, we're going to take over funding for essentially the top 10% of disability need.
Yeah.
So we'll create a system that deals with probably the kind of most expensive cohort of disabled people, and then you
Yeah.
states and territories, you guys can keep doing the rest.
Oh,
But
wow.
the last bit didn't quite happen. So a lot of these sort of state-run programs were defunded and dismantled, and the state sort of heard like, oh great, disability is a federal matter now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're seeing that people with disability who don't meet these really strict NDIS criteria, again, left without support, and it's causing a lot of financial strain and reductions in independence.
Interesting. No, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I never knew. You learn something new every day, so thank you for sharing that,
Exactly,
Dream.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's really interesting how
unbelievable.
the arrangement happened, yeah, and how we've ended up here.
No, interesting. And what are the key responsibilities of what are the key responsibilities of is a state and territory organization and government, in
Yeah, of
relation
course.
to disability services?
Uh-huh. So the states and territories need to acknowledge what their responsibilities are, is what People with Disability Australia is saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, so because they used to fund these disability services long before we had an NDIS, they need to keep stepping up and not just abandon the responsibility here. So because the NDIS was never meant to be the sole system, states and territories have this both legal and moral responsibility to contribute. So the kind of, again, as I said just before, the main responsibilities of the state and territories are just to take the sort of like 90% of disabled people and, you know, a few other bits and pieces here and there. But yeah, their other responsibilities here is to co-fund foundational supports with the federal government, which is now the kind of approach that they're walking down. So to ensure consistent access to services across jurisdictions, that's really important. And that we really don't want to see people with disability being caught in like a funding dispute, right? Between state governments and the federal government. It's kind of like pointing fingers at each other like that Spider-Man meme. It's, you know, I mean, like, it's not really about budgets, it's about like basic human rights.
True. Now thank you for that, Dream. So moving on to the next question. How are the lack of foundational, I guess, supports putting pressure on in the health and emergency services?
I think this one's really interesting because it kind of shows what happens if we don't set up these systems properly. So without foundational supports, people with disability keep ending up in crisis, and it keeps leading to, you know, unnecessary either hospital admissions or even like really extended hospital stays where there's nowhere else for somebody to go. It also, I know a lot of disabled people are stuck in emergency accommodation, so things like motels and hostels, and those are often not accessible places for us to be either, as well as just not a place that you can build a life from. We know that disabled people end up in nursing homes as well. There's sometimes the aged care system has taken over as an emergency safeguard there. And I mean, most concerning of all, we know that it leads to increased police interventions. When people with disability don't have our needs met, then, you know, for a bunch of us, we know that that can lead to behaviors of protest or behaviors of concern. And when there's not a more appropriate system to hear that protest or behavior and then go and meet the need behind it, then you end up with police who are only really trained in how to like use force to kind of manhandle people, right? So it's a really big concern. Some of the other some of the other concerning areas here, like I touched before on, it burdens families. So often family members and friends are left to fill the gaps. It places a really significant strain on unpaid carers, which was a big driver for why we introduced the NDIS, to make sure that we could kind of fix the gendered element of this, that it's often a lot of women and family members who are doing this unpaid care labor. So that's an important way to make our society fairer. And, you know, I mean, the same there applies for community services as well. Various sort of charities and not-profits and such need to step in and fill the gap. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm essentially just saying the absence of these proper supports, it increases mental health crises, homelessness, interactions with the justice system, and these are all things that we can prevent and we can stop, that are actually occurring now. We can stop them with proper rollout of foundational supports.
Yep, no, thank you for that. So, Trinity, what are PWDA's main concerns regarding disability and planning decisions?
Yeah, the eligibility and planning decisions are a pretty big concern for us at PWDA. With respect to foundational supports, our big concern is that it's really unclear at the moment. Like, we're hearing from our members all the time that they're concerned and confused. We've heard the federal government has kind of changed a few times on its messaging about what foundational supports mean and what they'll look like. So that makes it really hard for disabled people to plan their lives in the future. Leaves us uncertain about what kind of supports that we'd be able to access in the future. And there's a risk that high needs people who are ineligible for the NDIS will fall through the cracks if foundational supports aren't properly funded. So, excuse me, the integrity of the NDIS needs to be maintained. I think that's also what this is about, because foundational supports shouldn't be used as an excuse to strip the NDIS or cut the NDIS. It's, again, we had that like sort of 10-ish%, 90% situation. It shouldn't be used to start like carving holes in the NDIS or kick people off it willy-nilly. Yeah, so PWDA, we advocate for clear, nationally consistent eligibility criteria, which has low barriers to access to make sure that we can capture as many people as possible, and also avoid all of the unnecessary bureaucracy and delays that we see with the NDIS.
Now, thank you for sharing, Trinity. And sorry, I misread the question. Anyway, moving on. What is the role of co-design in the development of foundational supports?
Well, co-design's crucial, really, isn't it? Like, people with disability have to lead the design and the implementation and also evaluation after of foundational supports. Otherwise, it gets set up wrong. So, yeah, our disability representative organizations and disabled people's organizations need to both be at the center of this decision making. So not sidelined in favor of government or for-profit providers. we want to be in the room doing like real co-design, working with government to get them the information that they need, call out if something is not going to work so that they can like fix it ahead of time. We also want to make sure in this rollout that foundational supports are culturally appropriate. We know that there's several different identity and minority groups, which if they aren't properly represented in the room, then the rollout of foundational supports isn't going to work for them properly. So that's really important, as well as obviously making sure that they're accessible from like kind of a baseline, and that they meet real need. Foundational support should be meeting our actual needs and what we need, not just, you know, we want to just make sure that it's not sort of like a little, you know, something that like says it's offering stuff but isn't actually working for us on the ground. The kind of on the ground implementation of this is going to be really important. So yeah, I mean, consultation to date has absolutely, it's been inadequate. We haven't been consulted with in the kind of rich co-design way that needs to happen. So we've also seen many people with disability and representative organizations who've been excluded from the process or given really limited opportunities to engage in the process. And PWDA calls that out because we can't do this unless all of us are in the room.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks for pointing that out. I think it's important to have this very representation in the room.
Yeah,
So yeah,
because
good
we've kind of,
point.
it's all of us, isn't it? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Trinity, if people went to support DPI, PWDA, what are the key actions we could take?
Please join us. Join our organization. Become a member. If you just type into Google PWDA membership, you'll see the link there, or navigate to it on our website. Membership is free. You just need to sign up. And yeah, then once you've done that, then you can share your thoughts and opinions with us. So we really need to hear from you about what it is that you're dealing with and what kind of supports that you need so that we can make sure that the foundational supports rollout happens properly and that we get this systemic change. So advocacy is strongest when it's backed by the voices of our community. And we want to be able to share these voices and experiences to highlight what the real world impact of inaction is as well. Some of those sort of examples that I gave before, more of those stories are going to be really helpful.
No, awesome. Now you heard it from Trinity herself. If you want to become part of the PWA, just go on their website and subscribe. I think it's important to have more disability, people with disability on the ground. You know, we need more voices to be heard. So get on
100%.
to thank you very much, Trini.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Do you have any, I guess, final thoughts, final words?
I suppose just on our membership to say it's open to everybody with a disability of whatever sort. So that includes autism and ADHD, and it includes invisible disabilities, chronic illness, all of these sorts of things. There's no such thing as, I mean, we need to all stand together. So it's not about whether you're disabled enough or not. It's that we all have these sort of experiences to share and that we can all lean on each other to support this movement building.
We sure do. Jonathan, do you have anything you want to add?
No, Dave, thank you so much to Trinity. And if you ever want to come back on, you're always welcome.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. I would absolutely love to. Please invite me back on.
So yeah, you heard it from Jonathan, and it's always a pleasure to have you back on the show. all the best with your, I guess, role as the president of PWDA, and continue the work that you do. Supporting people with disability to, I guess, to live a more independent life. Sorry, it's just a pleasure having you on the chat, Trinity, and we look forward to seeing what WDA does for our communities. Supporting people with disability. For everyone out there, if you're watching CripChat, you're watching podcast of everything disability, join us next week as we talk about more issues relating to disability. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, everyone.